One perspective is a developer kind of perspective. Second perspective is a product manager kind of perspective. Third perspective is, can we record it? Yeah, yeah, feel free to record it. Anybody who has that అదేదో ఉంటుంది కదా రికార్డ్ చేయడానికి
యా
లూమో ఏదో.
యా నేను చేస్తున్నాను స్క్రీన్ రికార్డ్, అంటే ఎప్పటికైతే లూమ్ లేదు, బట్ స్క్రీన్ రికార్డ్ చేస్తున్నాను ఫస్ట్ అయితే.
Sure. Yeah, anytime just interrupt me. Feel free to, if something is a new term or whatever it is, just feel free to interrupt me.
షూర్.
Okay, so I'll try to answer a few questions. One, a developer perspective. Second, investor perspective. Third, product manager perspective. I'll give these three perspectives. I think with these three perspectives on what is happening in crypto space right now, you'll be able to make sense of where the money is going next in the next 1-2 years. And I'll also talk about how you can get started, and what are the areas where you can get some seed funding, like if you want to like do it as a side gig on weekends or whatever. Like what are the places where you can get $5,000 to $50,000 to experiment on an idea. So a lot of places like that, which these are called grants. So I will talk about a whole bunch of things. So by the end of this session, I think if you guys get convinced to explore some sort of a side gig in crypto, I would consider this session to be successful. So that's my aim, to convince you to explore crypto as a side gig and make a lot of money. This is the purpose of this call. Cool. So we will get started. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, you are able to see my screen? Yep.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so I want to talk about this one project called Nouns, and then like we will go layer by layer, deeper and deeper. So this is a solid example of what can happen only in Web3. This project cannot happen in Web2 world. This can only exist on Web3. And what do I mean by that? So this project is the 85 days old project. So what these guys do is they've written a Solidity program. Solidity is this blockchain programming language, and in which they are generating this 32 by 32 SVG image. And every day this noun goes on a sale, and people bid on it. So the winning bid is 200 Ethereum yesterday. Day before yesterday, it's 160 Ethereum. The day before that, 211 and 185, and so on. So there is one noun every day that is dropped, that is auctioned, and yeah, people are like, "What the fuck? Why is this? Why are people auctioning nouns, and why are all these people trying to buy these nouns?" Exactly right. So what happens is this 185 Ethereum and this 195 Ethereum, all of this goes into a treasury. This is called this is on Ethereum. So you can think of this like a collective bank account. So this treasury has accumulated $50 million. Yeah, 50 million, right? 5041628. Yeah, $50 million. So in 79 days, this particular project has accumulated $50 million of real money. And now, why are people buying these nouns? Is because if you hold a noun, you can control where these $50 million get spent. So that is how it is coded. All of this is coded on chain, and nobody owns this project. Nobody owns this noun. This is all public. Anybody can build on top of this nouns project. And if you have, like, if you want to change this artwork also, like you can launch another derivative code, and then you can deploy it and people can start using it. So this is what is happening. Like this, you, when you buy a noun, you not only buy a profile picture, but you can also control this treasury that holds $50 million. And this is like very unique to Web3, right? Like this is a collective bank account. This is owned by nobody. This is in fact owned by this nouns DAO, which is a treasury. DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. This is like you are looking at bank balance of a company. It's But this particular company is owned by the community of people who are buying these nouns every day. Guys, clear till here what this project is? We will now go deeper and deeper into this. How is it different from votes in democracy? This is voting in democracy only. Okay. So if you hold 1% of total noun supply, you can create a proposal. So somebody here created a proposal saying, let's donate 5 Ethereum each to 6 charities.
Yeah.
So basically, if I have to,
నా బేసిక్ క్వశ్చన్ ఇప్పుడు ఒకవేళ సెంట్రల్ ఒక కంపెనీ ఉన్నా కూడా లెట్స్ సే సమ్ కంపెనీస్ డీసెంట్రలైజ్డ్ కాకుండా ఒక కంపెనీ ఉంది అనుకున్నా కూడా సో దాంట్లో ఏం డిఫరెన్స్ ఉంటుంది సో లెట్స్ ఏ కంపెనీ టేక్స్ అవర్ ఓట్స్ బేస్డ్ ఆన్ వెయిటేజ్ అండ్ దే డూ ది సేమ్ లైక్ మనం ఏం డిసైడ్ చేస్తామో అదే చేస్తుంది కంపెనీ కూడా సో ఇది డీసెంట్రలైజ్డ్ అవటం వల్ల వచ్చిన మెయిన్ ప్రాఫిట్ ఏంటంటే
these rules can't be changed. సో ఇప్పుడు ఈ $50 million ఉంది కదా. In a company like how these $50 million gets deployed keeps changing every other day, right? There are some people be in the board meeting taking decisions on how these $50 million gets deployed. But over here, there is a piece of code that determines how these $50 million gets deployed. And that is like set in stone. This code is immutable. The rules, like, you can't mutate this code basically. And this will be like this forever. But in a company, like, you have to manually do it basically. Like you can't,
ఆ కోడ్ అంటే
like,
ప్రపోజల్స్ కూడా ఇంక్లూడెడా?
yeah, this code basically deploys money based on like those proposals voting. So let me show you. So in this, I think these guys have a 51% voting majority voting scheme. And okay, over here, like there are like, when this proposal was started, probably there are like 10 people owning nouns. So there are 7 people who voted for it, nobody voted against it. So this proposal is passed on chain itself. So that means somebody said, like, what does it mean to like do it on chain? You basically give your username. Like this 0x is your address, and you're saying, okay, let's try to create a proposal. Okay, we are saying we will build an iOS app for nouns, and then we will do something. Okay. Okay, it is saying you don't have enough votes to submit a proposal, but like let's try to add a transaction. Now address, let me pick up some test account I have. Okay, I have this address. Okay, I have this address. This is my wallet address, right? But this is like my bank account address. And the value, I'm saying I want 25 Ethereum. and then like there's some contract functions, etc., but let's ignore them for now. And then no arguments required. Okay, so essentially what we are saying is I'm going to create this proposal, and whenever the community accepts this proposal, 25 Ethereum is going to be deposited in my address. That is what I'm trying to say. So, and anybody can create this proposal so long as they hold 1% of the nouns. So this is the governance mechanism these guys have adopted, and this 1% total noun supply and majority voting, all of these are part of these contracts that are deployed. And this piece of code is immutable, so you can trust it that it will exist like that. And that's the reason people are like buying these nouns every day in an auction. Cool, sounds good so far.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'll tell you one more thing. Now, who are the people behind these projects? All the people, all these 10 people, they call themselves as nounders, just like founders. And they are all anonymous, pseudonymous. They didn't even put their name. They just put out this code. So one guy's name is Punk4156. Nobody knows who this guy is. And these guys came together on Twitter, and they launched this. And there's one more guy, Last Punk 9999. Yeah, nobody knows who this guy is. Last Punk 9999. Or let's take Punk 4466. I think there are a couple of people who others know, but like most of the people over there, people do not even know who those guys are. Even when they come to interviews, etc., they use a voice changer so that they are not identifiable.
So if the Nounders own 51% own cheste, they can get 49% of the rest of the money.
No, Nounders don't own 51%. So we saw that Noun 80, it was not auctioned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it went to this group of 10 people. These 10 people put together,
Mm-hmm.
they own every 10th noun.
Okay.
That is how they coded the contract. So founders should also need some rewards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now the nounders have chosen to compensate themselves with every 10th noun for the first 5 years of the project. So they own like 10% of the total supply of nouns for the first 5 years, and after that, their ownership itself will be reducing. So they also like position themselves as like a non-greedy set of founders, because their ownership itself in the project is reducing after 5 years. Every single day it is reducing.
But if someone owns 51% of these nouns, then there's a possibility 49% వాళ్ళ account లో deposit చేసుకునేది.
If someone owns 51%, yes, there is a possibility, but I think they are trying to, they have some mechanism to circumvent that. They like if somebody is like totally screwing with this treasury, they have some way to like completely stall it or something like that.
Okay.
Okay, so what did we see so far? Like, there are few things to note here from a developer perspective, right? So far we have seen a project, but as a developer, if you notice, there is an address. You can think of this address like a bank account address. Okay, all these bank account addresses start with 0x, 0BC, etc., etc. You'll see a lot of these. The second thing is it has certain money, which is like our bank balance, right? Now, where Bitcoin differs from Ethereum is Ethereum came up with this tiny innovation called, along with bank balance, I'll also put some code with every address. That is the innovation Ethereum has done. In Bitcoin, there is no code along with an address. So there is address and then there is balance, like this $50 million balance. So address balance, and the innovation Ethereum has done is with address balance, I'll also have code. this is the primary innovation that has unlocked all the innovation that we are seeing in crypto right now. On Bitcoin, you can't program because the addresses can't store code. But on Ethereum, you can deploy code to address. But then you need trust. So what Ethereum also said is once code is deployed at a particular address, it is immutable. This particular code can't be changed. It stays like that. So yeah, that's why this nouns DAO, etc., people believe because they're no longer trusting a person to take a decision, but there is an on-chain contract which they can trust to take a decision. So this is the code is at the core of like every bank account address. Like imagine it also has code, and that is what Ethereum is. And people are doing all sorts of things with this piece of code. Cool. Any questions? I want to go a little more deeper into developer perspective.
Bro, I'll just make a statement, so just let me know if it's true or false. So let's say this nouns.wtf. So that can be achieved using Web2 also. The only difference is that in Web3, like we are relying on a contract or code. Instead of in Web2, we'll be relying on humans or let's say a particular company. That's the only difference.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and also like in Web3 now there is no owner. This nouns DAO is owned by nobody except the owners of nouns itself.
But that we can only confirm by looking into the code or something, right? Like previously a question was posed, like if there is no rule that okay, one can have more than 50% of ownership, okay, then this nouns.wtf is anyways owned by that one person who has the majority.
Just like but you can now code it also, right? Like you can say in my contract people can't own more than 1%.
Yeah, yeah, that's
But you can put whatever rules you want.
hmm.
The
So that we
problem,
can only confirm by looking into the code. That's
Yeah. So all the code is open source. Like literally we can like if we spend 10-20 minutes we can go check it out. But I want to show you
yeah,
more interesting things.
yeah, got it. No.
so the problem, our case like identity token, I can have like 10 wallets and there is no way to verify that I'm the person who's making those transactions. Kada. I can have like 10
Yes.
different wallets and there is no identity for those wallets, and I can just start purchasing all the nouns. There's no way that I can say that these wallets are pointing towards one individual. Kada.
Yeah. But so the rate at which they're getting auctioned, each additional address will cost you how much? Like $300,000.
Okay.
So I think like there'll be some people who want to do that, but it's still very costly. But this is a real problem, very real problem. Like uh, how do you get the community participation instead of like one rich guy gaming with it? This is still a problem that Ethereum community and every other chain is discussing every other day.
Okay.
It's hard to come up with a solution. This is the case in uh, various other places also.
Okay.
Cool. So far we have established that code is is at the center of Web3. Okay, and the only innovation Ethereum has done lots of innovations, but essentially, like if we have to simplify it into one statement, it is this simple innovation that code is immutable and it gets deployed at a particular bank address, which has a bank balance. So this is the mental model using which we can navigate more of Web3. Okay, now I want to talk about a little bit about Solidity. Uh, okay, Solidity is a programming language. I just want to talk about this one keyword called payable. It's like JavaScript, nothing new, but just like we have sin x cos x, Solidity has keywords called address and payable, and I want to show you some actual code. Okay. Yeah, so in function, like in other languages, we have these access specifiers, right? Like public, private, and various other specifiers, read only, write only, whatever, whatever. So in Solidity, because now we are dealing with bank accounts, bank balances, there is this keyword called payable. Like there's no other language that has this keyword called payable. This is probably the only language that has this keyword called payable. Just like we have sin x cos x, we have this keyword called payable. What this does is anybody who is calling your function, they can now send you money, in the sense that if you have a beautiful algorithm, you can deploy it at a particular address, and anybody who wants to use that deployed algorithm, any time they are invoking a function, if you just tag the function payable, you can say inside this function you can specify how much amount they should be sending you, and you can make a lot of money by doing that. In fact, okay, is this clear what this payable keyword does? This is
Yes.
this is the innovation in this programming language. So we talked about addresses, right? There are addresses, and then there is balance with each address. So address is also inbuilt keyword, just like sin x cos x int and so on and so forth. And payable is also another thing. These are like basic uh, like at money to model money at a programming language level. These two keywords are introduced. This address is like that 0x something something that we have seen, and this payable keyword is for accepting money, accepting payments. Cool, so far clear. So I'm giving a dev perspective first. I'll give you the product manager perspective and an investor perspective after this. But like, to repeat again, from a dev perspective, code is at the center, and there is an address. The difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum is that every address has code, and then inside this code, if we look at these programming languages, they have these inbuilt keywords to handle addresses and make functions payables. Cool. Okay, there is payable, but what can I do with this payable keyword? So you can build a yeah, like this is not the chain link I was looking for. Uh, okay, so what these guys did is this is a company called Chainlink. So these guys deployed smart contracts at various addresses, and any developer who wants to build their own smart contract, they can use Chainlink smart contracts and build on top of it. And so basically, the payable keyword they have used, and let's say, let me give an example. So these guys have defined in a contract called a random number generator. So if I use Chainlink's random number generator, I have to pay them 2 link tokens. And these guys' valuation, let me open Chainlink, $32 billion. Chainlink's fully diluted market cap. So all that these guys did is like, okay, there are all these developers, millions of developers, probably not millions right now. There are like 20, 30,000 developers, and all these developers need smart contracts, and everybody needs certain basic algorithms and various sort of data processing tools and various sort of like outside data that is not existing on chain. Like there'll be like price feeds, etc., that you may want to use in your smart contract. So these guys created all those methods and exposed them on chain. And yeah, this is the kind of market cap they have. Like they're like 4 5 year old company. Cool. Why this is possible, you can see, right? This is like, what should I say, this is like giving an web 2 analog of Chainlink is hard. This is a truly web 3 kind of possibility, Chainlink.
Is it not like a library, just technology wise?
Yes, it is exactly like a library, and but now you can charge for your libraries because there is this keyword called payable.
Yeah.
And these guys figured out what are the libraries that all other developers want, and they have like deployed it at various addresses, and they let everybody use them. This is like built by less than 100 people, and they even got started with very small things. And it's like, yeah, whatever, $32 billion value is crazy. Yeah. So all that happened because of this simple keyword called payable. I wish this existed in all languages everywhere. But then you also need a supporting computational framework to accept currency. Cool. So to summarize the dev perspective, code is at the center. Difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum. With every address, Ethereum can hold code. In Bitcoin, an address can't hold code because in Ethereum, code can be held. People started building a lot of things, and the code is immutable. Because it is immutable, people are trusting the code. In fact, like if even if you try to deploy the same code, it will generate a new address for you. In Ethereum, you can't update the code, deploy it an address. Instead, it will generate you a new code. And yeah, we saw an example of Nouns project where we could see the public bank account balance. And the other example we saw is Chainlink, which is using the keyword payable, and they build, like, yeah, like Manoj said, libraries which other developers used, and it's like a $26 billion company. Guys, so I'm giving like super high level view of like only the absolute differences between web 2 and web 3. There is a lot to unpack, but with these mental models you'll be able to navigate, you'll be able to like go check out other things, and like try to fit in where uh, it falls on the spectrum. Any questions? I will now move to a product manager viewpoint. So far, I have given a very developer centric viewpoint.
Yeah. So I had a question. S- specific to what we saw regarding Chainlink, right?
Yeah.
So what was the reason they had to create a separate token? Uh,
Oh, because they wanted everybody to speculate, right? Like
okay.
if they were doing it on Ethereum, there won't be speculation, there won't be traders. Now, if they are having their own currency, which is associated with their library, all their libraries, they have like 100 or 200 different kinds of libraries, or maybe more now. So now everybody who is transacting their libraries, there is a link token. Now, if I want to use their random number generator, I have to pay 2 link tokens. If I have to use their like if I want to use Tesla stock to do something in my contract, maybe Chainlink will have a price feed of real-time price feed of Tesla stock, and I'll have to pay like 1 link token because it is their token. Like they can play with it whichever way they want. And now link token is listed in Coinbase, link token is listed in Binance, link token is listed everywhere.
Hmm. So if they only wanted to uh, charge for the usage, they could have used an existing token. But if they have their own token, they can also speculate. That was the bigger reason
Yeah,
behind it, right?
yeah, absolutely. Now all the token holders of link, they would also uh, like let's say now I hold 100,000 link tokens. Now I would be loyal, right? Now I want my link tokens to also appreciate in value, so I'll build an application in such a way that it uses link tokens instead of ethers. Yes, essentially a shareholder of the company, exactly. So you feel like more ownership, more loyalty, because there is a token and you know that it appreciates in value.
Hmm. Uh, so one thing that just uh, came to my mind is that if you have a separate token, then that also adds a moat. Like someone that can't just replicate what you have and uh, launch a similar one, right? Because their token it will be of a lower value.
Yes, I think that's a very good observation. Yeah, like if you have to now compete with Chainlink, it is really hard, especially on the
Right.
same features that they have, same libraries that they have. But if you're like doing something completely new with a different token and ownership structure with some like new kind of possibility, I think then there is a possibility. But otherwise, there is no hope to compete with Chainlink now.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
Hi, I have a very basic question. How do you avoid programming errors in something like this? And what is that risk that comes with programming errors?
So
In,
your question
with
is how?
respect to DAO, if there are programming errors in the code,
Oh,
yeah,
ha.
you can potentially,
Okay,
how do you stay protected from hacking or any such thing?
like I'll show you guys. You're able to see my screen, right? I haven't stopped sharing. Yeah, okay. MAV. Uh, okay. So I need to go to MAV. Just search. I just want to show. Instead of saying something, I wanted to show an answer. Okay, there's the long answer is that I'll show you a few products. So there is $47 million available for you to hack contracts and get paid. There's this product called Immunify where every smart contract developer lists their contract and they will basically ask you to hack it out. And yeah, these are the current bounties that are live. Like Polka Starter has $2 million, Graph Protocol has 2.5. Like if we go check it out, it has various sorts of like vulnerability levels, threat levels, and all this. And depending on the level of bug you find out, they decide the payout. So this is like proactive risk mitigation that like the assets in scope are clearly defined here, and we just need to like click here. We go to this code, we read this code, and like if we figure out some way to like hack this code, uh, I mean hack as in like exploit it, we'll be able to like get these payouts for real, and they would have like mitigated a much bigger risk. So this is one way people are doing these days, the developers. The second way is there's this thing called smart contract audits.
So is
So
the incentive to use Immunify or something like that when you can steal so many million ETH directly and you're anonymous?
yeah, people do that. That's what I was trying to show. So okay, this one is not loading properly, but like there's a lot of money that people are making, and this is to the north of like half a billion or $1 billion, because people write useless code and uh, lot of exploits are happening. You can stop exploits and make money, but yeah, that's one way. So whenever you find a bug and its impact can now be measured, right? So if it is a bug that causes a $10 million impact, typically in this ecosystem, people pay you 10% of the impact to you as a developer for reporting the bug and helping mitigate it. But on the other hand, you can get to keep all 100% if you exploit it. But then you have to figure out how to stay anonymous and yeah, figure out how to yeah, like make sure none of the you don't get doxed. So there are these flashboards. Like over here, there's a dashboard where you can see some of the exploits, how much money people are losing. Like it runs into half billion dollars. And over here, people are trying to do
Abhilash, I shared one tweet. I think that's what you wanted to share.
yes, where
The
did you?
$2 million MEV arbitrage bot. I put it in your in this meet messages.
Oh, you put it in the meet messages.
No, I
Wait.
mean Google Meet in this
Oh, you put it in
chat.
Google Meet. Yeah, like that. These sorts of things also, right? Like people are exploiting arbitrages. Like this is not like a code like bug, but this is more like a bug in finance system itself. It's a bug in like supply demand dynamics itself. It's a economics bug. It's not a coding bug. So over here, somebody is swapping Ethereum for sushi on SushiSwap. SushiSwap is like one exchange for swapping currencies, and then like they're swapping what is this DeFi 5 for Ether on Uniswap V2. So they have like this sort of a trial to do the swapping, and then like at the end of it, they have a profit of $2 million. Yeah, look at this one. Like they swapped Ethereum to Fodal, Fodal to USDC, and USDC to Ether back. And all this happened in one block, and like they made like another 30 Ethereum. So people are exploiting it left, right, center. So there are people who are exploiting coding bugs. There are people who are exploiting like economic bugs like this. These are bugs in financial markets and the way currencies are modeled itself. There are people exploiting these too. So yeah, it's and then like some protocols are taking proactive measures. Uh, yeah, I showed you that graph protocol. So and still exploits happen. There are exploits going to the tune of $40 million, $50 million, $100 million. So yeah, guys, any other questions? Hey Amita, did I answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Guys, so let me summarize.
Uh,
So we, yeah,
yeah, Abhilash, yeah, I have a small doubt. Yeah. So when you are referring to Web3, right? So is it mostly related to just smart contracts or anything that is built on crypto, like just using decentralized ledger, uh, like which need not have which the application need not ideally have a something like your own token, or I mean where you do this and your user base is some web 2 people, like not the your end customer basically who,
yeah. I think that's a very interesting question. So are you saying smart contracts are only for certain kinds of audiences, or how do you uh, make smart contracts more widely appealing to Web 2 audiences? Is that the question? Have I understood?
mm, uh, yeah, I mean what exactly I was trying to ask is let's say like is building any application on a blockchain is a web3 is what we are talking about, or like let's say I have seen few people doing mm, things on blockchain basically, but they are not ideally focused on any finance exchange. I mean, of course, these kind of thing, tokens, and where the contracts have the money and all these things. It's mostly that they have built that application for people who are into the Web 2 world. Uh, so,
Hmm. Yeah. So mm, look, if you're talking about NFTs and stuff like that, then it is much more broadly appealing. There are some applications for games also. There are certain things happening there. I'll show you more things in the next few minutes.
sure, sure.
Uh, yeah, guys. So far, just focused on developer kind of perspective. Code is immutable. The difference between Ethereum and Bitcoin is that Ethereum, every address can also hold code, and each of these code others can also like use them as libraries and compose services on top of it. This is called composability. And yeah, there's this at programming language level. There are these keywords called address and payable that make all of these happen at a very yeah, in a very seamless manner. So we talked about the developer person. Now let's talk about the code is immutable and people find a bug. How will it be fixed? That's what it can't be fixed. That's why people are giving millions of dollars in bounties. That's why people are exploiting it left, right, center. That's why developers are in high demand. That's why the entry salaries are $150,000, $200,000. Code is immutable here. People have to be super careful who they hire. It's crazy, and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, or tens of millions of dollars is flowing through the code. Yeah. So yeah, in fact, like, is it mutable on a testnet? I mean, testnet also it is not mutable. It's also a double-edged sword, right? If the code is mutable, people won't trust your code. Like if Chainlink's code can be changed like in whatever the way they want, or if that nouns project code can be changed in whatever way they want, whenever they want, like I will no longer trust it, right? Like people won't participate in that auction. So the immutability brings in the trust, but like yeah, it brings its own set of problems. What's the bounty for if it is not fixable? Yeah, so they first deploy all these contracts on a test net, right? Like when it is on a test net, they give out a bounty, and before they deploy on mainnet. So some of these contracts that we see, yeah, like even if sometimes it is on mainnet, it is on like a fake address because they're now trying to like do a dry run before it is real. Yeah, the bounties are to get a lot of people to like poke holes into it, like figure out bugs in it, like slice it, dice it, mash it this way, that way. Cool guys. So yeah, I think you're all and testnet has no fee. Yes, testnet does not have fee, but mainnet, if you have to deploy a contract, it costs you around $100. You have to do a transaction. It depends on the gas fee. Okay, let's go and check the gas fee. Gas station. Oh my god. Yeah, there's a lot of gas price right now, but it is not too much. So these are all the gas guzzlers. Uniswap, Axie Infinity, all these have paid like a lot of gas fee. Cool. So let's now but is getting a contract to 100% secure before deployment feasible at all? The stakes are too high. Yeah, I think there was some famous quote I read somewhere. You can only test for the presence of bugs, not their absence. So it's like a P equal to NP kind of problem. I don't
Yeah,
think
yes.
you can ascertain it is 100% secure because yeah, what are we testing for when we are testing for a bug? Testing for its presence, not for its absence. So it's really hard. Hmm. Cool. Exactly. How do you launch them? I mean, like you try to simplify it to one singular use case and like battle test it for like a few months and then launch it instead of like adding too much complexity. And then yeah, there are a lot of like standard exploits which you try to avoid. Call will end in 10 minutes. After that, please join. Oh, why will the call end in 10 minutes?
It's a free call.
Oh, cool. Guys, so that's the developer perspective. I want to also give you the product manager perspective, and we also have the investor perspective part. Cool. Shall we go to the product manager perspective?
Yes, please.
Cool. Okay, so typically, what would a product manager concern themselves with? The product manager concerns themselves with who is the user and who are we building it for. There's one more message. Any one-stop place for devs to get started? Yeah, we have Questbooks. I think that's a shameless plug, but like there are. Yeah, like I'll tell you something better by the end of this session. Um, cool. So a PM perspective is very important, right? A PM has to bring who is the user to the table. So far, we talked about like very database kind of perspective, or like what does the programming language look like? Is it mutable? Is it immutable? Yeah, a PM doesn't think in that manner. A PM thinks about who is the user, and it turns out the users for this blockchains and blockchain technologies are developers, because like for any new computing platform to get widespread adoption, it has to first appeal to developers. That's the only way any new computing platform can grow. It has happened with desktop and desktop operating systems. With desktops like Microsoft and Apple got a lot of developers, and then with mobile phones, Apple iStore and Google Play Store, they got a lot of developers and they improved. They've put enormous amount of resources to improve developer tooling, and that's exactly what is happening in Web3 also. This is a new computing paradigm, new kind of computation which commoditizes trust in an open, decentralized, permissionless manner. And the very first set of audience in this new computing platform are developers. Okay, I want to show it to you in a quantitative manner what I mean by that. So let's go to August 2020. So there are like just two chains, Ethereum and Celo. Like here, there is no Bitcoin. This only has programmable blockchains. Okay, the two chains that exist in August 12th, 2020 are Ethereum and Celo. Both these chains have that sort of like ability where there is an address, it has balance, but it can also hold code that can be run. Now, as we go, September, not much activity, November, okay. Now things are starting to heat up. And enter 2021, things starting to heat up more. All these are developer facing tools, and more and more, more and more, more and more and more and more. So all these developer facing tools. Now it is not even fitting in my screen. Everything you see here happened or launched in last 6 months. Like this is what, like October, and we talking about like August. Like let's go back, like go look at it again. Like January, there are like few things, 5 6 of things, but then as we move down and down, like there are like 100 different developer facing tools. This turning into like an AWS of sorts, right, or a Microsoft Azure of sorts, where the tools for developers are getting built at a rapid velocity. And what happens after that is a whole bunch of innovation. Look, so like we have Ethereum, but why are these, or why are all these other things showing up here? Because one is Polygon is cheaper, another one is energy friendly, another one is optimized for writes, another one is optimized for reads, another one is optimized for NFTs, another one is optimized for IoT devices, another one is optimized for something else. So each one of these here is optimized for one thing or the other. Just like we have like 100 different databases, right, on like AWS or whatever, like to choose from. So these are like, you can think of some of these as purpose-built blockchains for various sorts of custom applications. Some of them are generic, some of them are sort of like very focused on optimizing one specific aspect. Cool. So what am I like trying to establish here? Right now, the user for the Web3 technology is a developer, and a lot of tooling is getting built for developers. If you're a product manager and you're looking at the ecosystem, now is a great time to get to do a developer facing tool and like build something. Cool. This is clear. What I'm trying to say here.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Okay. So I didn't like fully answer the question. Who is the user, right? Over here, I only talked about developers. Now, that's only one side of the story, right? Like when developers are there in ecosystem, they also have to build for someone. Now, who are these developers building for? Now, okay, this is great. Like there's all this infrastructure getting built, optimizing for various sorts of like use cases and all sorts of things. But who are these developers building for? All these infrastructure provider infrastructure layer companies are building for developers, but who are these developers building for? Now, to answer that question, we have to go back to the origins of blockchain itself, right? Like they're all about like money and moving money and balances and like whole bunch of decentralized finance applications. So the set of people these developers are building for are retail investors and speculators and all the people you see on stock markets. So one persona is this developers, the other persona is this whole bunch of retail investors who are basically like playing with these stocks. So I'll just show you some examples. How many of you own cryptocurrency?